On this episode, we get to talk with Ben Stapley about leading and participating in meaningful meetings. Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast. I am your host, Kendall Connor. Our goal with this podcast is simple, and that is simply just to have conversations that empower healthy churches. We have a great one for you today. Joining me is someone who is no stranger to our show. Returning for his second episode with us is the incredible Ben Stapley. Now, listen, if you don't know Ben, let me tell you all about him. For over 20 years, Ben has been creating and capturing moving and memorable moments for individuals, for nonprofits, corporations, really across the globe. He has served on the executive team of multiple megachurches, and he currently serves as the executive pastor of Zarephath Christian Church in New Jersey. Ben he consults for churches, he teaches at universities, he speaks at conferences about leadership, communication, creativity. You can just tell right away that this is going to be a great conversation today. And really, we get a chance to dive into how church leaders and ministry leaders can both lead and participate in meaningful meetings. So I know it's going to be a good one. Let's jump right into my talk today with Ben Stapley. Hey, how are you, Ben?
Kendall, thank you for having me on a second time. I wondered after the first time, was it good enough to be invited back? It's been a year, but hey, I answered the call. You invited me back. Thank you for having me. And again, thank you for that glorious introduction. I will be Venmoing you money shortly. Thank you for that and praising me up the wazoo there. It's great to be here with your community. I'm really looking forward to talking on the subject.
Oh, well, I mean, based off of the previous time that we had you on here, I can just tell you, I know that this one is going to be really good. I would encourage everyone who's listening today, if you haven't listened to that episode, to definitely go back, because you definitely deserve the great introduction, because I know that this is going to be a good one today. And it's kind of a special day. This episode is our 100th episode.
Come on now. What a milestone.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
You got to get the confetti going, you know. It's a big deal. We're really excited about that. And it just makes sense to have a returning guest on here that I know you'll be able to share some awesome wisdom with us today. Drop some truth bombs on us, maybe. What you think?
Hopefully.
Oh, that's going to be great. Well, we just read the public bio, but something that we always like to ask is really, what's something that doesn't make that public bio that you would want our listeners to know about you today? Maybe some of your family or friends would know about you.
Yeah, I don't know if I want the listeners to know this or they need to know this by any stretch of the imagination, but I am a sneakerhead. I'll try to, I know some people are listening and not viewing, but for the viewer audience right now, I'm rocking my Jordans.
Nice. And my
Jordan 1s biohack. And I was going to pick up the cement black retro 3s on Saturday, but I decided the $200 should go towards my daughter's college fund at some point. My wife told me, she said, "You're an executive pastor. You've been one for 5 years. Stop dressing like you're in high school." So at some point, the shoe collection needs to take a pause. I think I've reached that stage in my life.
That number one, I'm so impressed by the commitment. For those who are listening to this, you didn't get to see what I just witnessed. I mean, he was able to lift his leg and get it in frame to show off these sneakers. I mean, it's impressive. If anything, if you're listening to this on the podcast, this is just a great excuse to go over to YouTube and to be able to check it out.
This is a visual experience, everybody. Watch.
No, that's incredible. And now I've got shoe envy, so I've got to go pick up some of these, I think. Well, I know that today, really the focus of our conversation today, we want to be able to talk about meetings. And so I know that, hearing a little bit about your journey, you've probably been in some meetings over the years, probably countless meetings, probably some good, some maybe not so great. Can you tell us a little bit about your journey and maybe how you've been able to learn from that to be able to create meaningful meetings?
Yeah. And again, thank you for not only having me on, but having this topic. Normally, when it comes to a great podcast, you're looking for something that's clickbaitable, right? What's something that's good, that sells, that sounds very sexy in the title. And I can just envision it right now, right? Leading and I'm participating in great meetings. Hopefully the click rate doesn't plummet with that title, but I think it's important for us to talk about we spend the majority of our times in meetings. And if we're not leveraging them well in our work weeks, then we're really, as ourselves, not being as effective as we can for the kingdom. We're not empowering the people who are leading. And it's just a train wreck of organizational unhealth and mismanagement if you can't manage this most basic form of communication and teamwork, the meeting. So I'm excited to talk about that. And I'm excited to talk about it because I remember when I first joined the workforce, like most people, I was involved in boring, unimaginative, and long meetings. And then I became a leader. And I started to lead boring, unimaginative, and long meetings. And so it's a tension.
On both sides, honestly.
No, I didn't learn this in my undergrad. I didn't learn this in seminary. I learned through the School of Hard Knocks of how to leverage the power of a great meeting to inspire people, move the mission forward, again, through trial and error. And again, even if I'm able to pivot people's perspective of what a meeting could be and should be, I would be, to me, I'm going to stand on the soapbox for the next 30 minutes just to do that. I Googled this morning, books about meetings, and the top hit I got was by Patrick Lencioni. It's a great book, but it's Death by Meetings, right? Our negative assumption starts at the gate. Oh my goodness, it's another meeting. Most of us don't look forward to them, but we can change that for ourselves. And most importantly, for our leaders are listening, for the people who are coming to our meetings. May they not say, oh boy, here's another meeting, but instead, oh boy, here's another meeting.
Right. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your journey. How many, this is a great question that I didn't plan on. So I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. How many meetings do you think you have been a part of in your journey?
Oh my goodness. I don't even want to count. I know I can count. I was able to, at some point I counted all the Sunday services I've been a part of. And I had that number in the back of my mind, tallying up again and again. But I would say probably an easier question for me to answer is how much time. And I would speculate maybe a fifth of my work experience has been in meetings. Wow. And if you Google that, that's pretty normative for most people. Some people, it's even more. But I would say that could have probably been a tenth of my work experience.
Wow.
And so even how do we manage that well?
Yes,
is something that obviously we talk about, because if you're spending anywhere up to a fifth, a fourth, a third, or even a tenth, that's a lot of your work week. How do you manage it well?
Meetings are something that I would assume most leaders would say are just a necessary part of what we do. But would you say that it's important that we are creating meaningful meetings for the people that we are leading?
Yeah. So it's a necessary part, and it's not even a necessary evil. Again, the tool itself is neutral. How we use it is determining whether or not it is a negative or a positive experience. So at the end of the day, what's the purpose of a meeting? It allows us to gather people together, get consensus, get buy-in, banter, experience different perspectives, have relational rapport, and build the trust that we all need. So when we're locking arms and taking the next hill, we think somebody has our back. It's really hard to get that camaraderie via just strictly electronic means. And an email. And I know a lot of people can do, we're not going to go into the remote versus hybrid experience, but meeting with people, engaging them, and having some type of relational equity with them helps you then in turn say, we have something hard, but we can tackle this together. And I know that because we've met together already. And so now what we're trying to execute is a lot more achievable because we've already built that relationship via a meeting experience.
No, that's so good. And I think sometimes we like to lead under the impression that, I'll throw it in an email, I'll do these things, but there is power in getting people around a table, getting people in that Zoom call if need be. But yeah, there is something powerful. Something that I know that I've heard you say before is that when it comes to meetings, being prepared as a leader and also being prepared to be an engaged participant, both sides of that coin are important. Can you touch on that at all?
Yeah, and I'll even piggyback on something you just said before I dig into that. You talked about whether or not we should have meetings, which is a great question. The other side of that coin is, should we not have the meeting? And I think most leaders probably wrestle with that question and probably need to cancel some meetings. We'll get back to that, but I just want to make sure both those thoughts are on the table in terms of should we have more or should we have less? Or should we be more purposeful with the time that we're using? So in terms of having a meaningful meeting, right? You got two people. You got people leading the meeting. You have people participating in the meeting, but both need to come to the table to make sure it's a great experience for those who are there. I got a feeling most of our audience listening are leaders at some point. Maybe they're leading a staff. Maybe they're leading volunteers. They're probably leading somebody and participating in that leadership role of the meeting. So if you're in that position, how are you coming to it and treating every minute as something precious? I remember the first time 20 years ago I was in ministry and I was giving an annual report for our elder meeting. And there was 10 people around the table, all very senior leaders in the church, senior leaders in what they did in the corporate world, kind of, heavy hitters. And I had a 10-minute presentation. And to be honest, I kind of phoned it in. It wasn't the best presentation. I was here to tell them a report on my year of ministry, and I really didn't give it a lot of effort. And then anyways, after the meeting, one of the members of the board was a mentor of mine, and he pulled me aside and he said, "Did you prepare for it enough?" I said, "Like, what do you mean?" He said, "Well," he said, you were talking to probably the 10 most influential people in the church. You took 10 minutes. So that's 100 minutes of our time. How long did you prepare for it?" And I said, maybe 30. And he said, "I'll be honest, it felt like 3. And you weren't respecting our time." And not like he was so important, but he was setting that template for me that when you're in a meeting, you're leading the meeting, you're participating in an element of it, of leadership. Yes. Did you respect the organizational time that's in there, right? 10 people. Sometimes some of our staffs, you could talk to some people or even volunteers. You might be meeting with your volunteer team on Sunday morning. There might be 50 people huddling around in your lobby, and you're meeting with them for 5 minutes. Well, that's 250 minutes of organizational time.
Wow.
Did you treat it with enough responsibility? Are you honoring the time that was invested with you? I remember he said this to me afterwards. He said, if you honor our time, we'll give you more time. In other words, if you come in prepared, we're going to give you more time down the road. And the inverse of that statement is also true, right? If you didn't prepare in this meeting and you were not honoring the participants' times, you're not going to get more time down the road. And your leadership lid is going to be capped. So again, leading it, the whole meeting or elements of it, come prepared, and then realize Parkinson's law, right? We all will take as much time as allotted. So if I have a task to write a sermon in 1 day, in 8 hours, I'll get it done. If I'm given 16 hours, I'm given 2 days, I'll get it done. If I'll take as much time as I'm allocated. And so when you're leading that meeting, just remember Parkinson's law. If you think the meeting only needs 45 minutes, maybe it only needs 30. Because if you give yourself 60, guess what? It's going to take 60. So those are some just like best practices for leaders, Parkinson's law, and coming in prepared. And then for the participants, coming in ready to engage. And so being active, paying attention, staying focused, asking probing questions when needed. I remember I was a part of a team, and the leader who was leading the meeting, some people were multitasking. They were listening in. They were typing on their laptop. They weren't fully tapped in. And he said, time out. Let me pump the brakes. He said, if you can multitask, cool. I will let you do that. He said, but it's a one strike and you're out. In other words, as we're talking and you're typing away, if I say, "Hey, Frank, what are your thoughts on that, on what we're talking on?" And you give me deer in the headlights, then you're not multitasking. You're single tasking. Right. You're focusing on what you're typing. You're not actually preparing in the meeting. So he said some of us can do it. Most of us can't. I'll call it out. And so he said, it's a one strike and you're out. And this isn't to shame anybody, but it's to acknowledge most of us do not focus well. So close laptops, unless you're one of those real unique hybrids who can do two things at once. Yes. And I found that was really helpful for myself as a participant. Yeah. Be fully engaged, be fully locked in, and then ask the needed questions and sometimes the hard questions. Again, story time. I was at a church, first time there. Everyone else was seasoned. They were there about 20 years, and they'd been doing an annual picnic. And the person who was leading it was walking through like the block and tackle. Okay, here's the who, what, when, where, why. They're going through it. And the newbie, I put my hand up and I said, excuse me. I said, who are we doing this for? And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, who's our primary audience? Is this for insiders to celebrate our church community?
Right.
Is this more for outsiders to attract them to the church? Who are we? We got a primary and a secondary audience. Yes. Who is it? And there was like 5 seconds of awkward silence.
Yeah, kind of.
And he said, I don't know. I've never been asked that. We've never asked ourselves that. That's a great question. Yeah. Let me wrestle with it and come back to you in the next meeting. So as a participant, completely changed the direction and the focus of this thing that there was no focus.
Right.
That question gave it focus. So sometimes you think as a participant, I'm not leading. I don't have say. Oftentimes the questions you ask can be the most influential thing that moves and pivots an organization to a better path forward.
No, that's really good. And to me, that's just a good reminder that it requires work on both sides, right? As a leader, you got to come in prepared. But then if you're attending a meeting, like you want to make sure that you're providing value and that you're at least making the most of that time and that. So what a great reminder. You touched on this a little bit, but when it does come to determining as a leader, you may be struggling to determine whether or not a meeting is necessary. What is the best way to evaluate whether something should just be an email, right? Or if it should be a meeting where you get people around a table?
I like that premise. I don't know if it's true that leaders are wondering if meetings should be happening. Again, in my experience, and I'll speak for myself, right? Leaders love hearing the sound of their own voice. Most will not question if a meeting should happen. Most will assume, well, I'm talking. There should be someone in the room listening to me. Yeah. So asking that question is a first great question. I'll say, if you're asking that question, if you find yourself asking that repeatedly, usually you know the answer, right? Usually the answer is no, it's not. The fact that I'm wondering with this and wrestling with it is an indication of whether or not we should do it. And then a very pinpointed question, not just should we, but I like to ask this question: dialogue or monologue? Is this meeting going to be a dialogue, right, or is it going to be a monologue? If it's going to be a dialogue, yay, let's keep it on the calendar. If it's going to be a monologue, then send the email. Write what you were going to say and send it out. But if you're not looking for feedback and interaction and buy-in, and for someone to poke holes at your incredible plan, right, don't do it. Don't have a meeting. Don't waste your time. Send us the email. So that's a good back pocket question for any meeting you're doing: is dialogue or monologue?
Oh no, I love that, and it makes so much sense. I feel like a lot of times meetings, they'll lack focus, they'll lack clarity, and so what would you say are some practical ways that leaders can come prepared, can create an agenda, or just really making sure that the purpose of a meeting, why we're all here, is clear for everyone?
Yeah, again, let's keep the cookies on the bottom shelf. You said some basic things, but I've been invited to a meeting that didn't have a title. I didn't know what we were meeting about, or the description was given to me verbally, and then I couldn't what are we trying to tackle in this meeting? What's the agenda? So having an agenda, having that easily accessible. I love to throw that into the calendar notes so people aren't scrolling through their emails or trying to find this
Sure.
what you're working off of. Obviously, having a call to action on the end of it. So not only did we meet, but we wrote down what we decided to do. We know who's doing it. We're giving a timeline on that. And then we can have follow-up based upon that. Oftentimes you have a great meeting, incredible things were said, nothing was written down, and you can't pass it down to anybody else unless you write it down first. So again, these are basic things, but I've been in part of a lot of meetings where I haven't seen these happen. And then I stumbled upon this recently. I was trying to recall it, and I was Googling it today. I couldn't find it. But I was reading about a Fortune 500 company with some pretty heavy hitters. And they had, whenever they met with their executive team, if there's something that they wanted to, content that they wanted to consume and then discuss, they didn't give it out in advance. And I found that fascinating. Isn't that respecting people? They literally handed out the article or gave electronic copies in the meeting, had people read it then real time in the meeting, and then discuss about it. And the person was saying the reason we do that is because we're all such at a high level that we're really good at BSing each other. And we could skim the article or pretend we read the article or listen to the podcast or whatever. And we really didn't do it. And so we just force ourselves to that high level of accountability that we're going to discuss this great podcast. But before we do it, now that we're all here, let's listen to it together. So again, it's small things like that really change the dynamics of what you're doing in that time. And don't assume everyone's going to do the homework. Sometimes you need to force yourself. If you have high achievers who like to, fake it until they make it, forcing them to do it real time is an advantage.
Wow. No, that's definitely, that's really unique. And man, kind of got my wheels turning a little bit about, how to include that in future meetings that I do. One question that I know that can kind of come up for ministry leaders is, you want to make people feel valued. You want to include different people. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can be tricky if we're honest. Okay, who needs to be in the meeting? Is it something where you include as many people as possible, or is it the kind of thing where you want to be careful about who you invite to your meetings?
I'm one of 3 boys in our family. And my dad used to have a saying that he would say, you send one boy to do a job, you get one boy's work. He said, you send 2 boys to do a job, you get half a boy's work. You send 3 boys to do a job, you get no work. And so that always rattles around in it was true. The 3 of us would go and we just roughhouse and we wouldn't get anything done. But if he divided us and conquered. So I'll state my bias up front that I'm a big believer in independent work. I see there's a huge value on that. Sometimes we all remember the group assignments in high school where we just relied on the smart person to do it and the rest of us phoned it in. So that can happen in your meeting environments if you're not careful. Just realizing that up front. So my default is as small as possible. What's the least amount of people that you need in that meeting to actually accomplish it? And then if possible, think through who do you necessarily keep off. Now, there's an underlying question that I think is girding what your original question, which is both are good questions, is who do you invite, who do you not? And then how do you disseminate information accordingly? Like we think sometimes the only way to disseminate the information is within the meeting. That's not true. There's 2 types of people that you need to communicate. First of all, you need people that you're consulting with, and then you need people that you're informing. Sometimes we think both parties need to be in the meeting. They don't. Okay. Just the parties that you need to consult with, you need to brainstorm with, you need to run ideas past, you need to get buy-in from. Those are the people you're consulting with. They should be at the meeting. Now, after that, there's an email goes out to the other layer of people that need to be informed about what happens. But, we just had a 2-hour staff meeting. And there's a number of ministry decisions that we've made that have downstream effects for our facility guys in terms of what needs to be set up, when, where. Do they need to know the why? No, they don't. And they don't, but having that meeting, watching us wrestle through the why is a waste of their time. And so they are not being consulted. They are being informed. So just really helping you think through those concentric circles of communication where people land in those, and then making sure you're just inviting the consulting circle to your meetings is really helpful to keep it small.
No, that's great. And I love that, you probably have people who, if you look back on the meetings that you've been involved with, or that you've had, or even that you've attended in the past, there's probably been moments where you think like, I'm not even sure that I need to weigh in on this, right? It would have been much better if they could have hashed this out without me and just let me know, right? And I think maybe a lot of leaders are afraid that if they don't include people in the meetings, that they're going to feel like you're telling them that they're not valuable. But it's almost like you want to let them. You want to say, I respect your time enough to not include you on this meeting. Yes.
Yeah, but I'm shaking my head, but push into that. I think you're just landed on something really, really important there.
No, and it's I think it's important just to let people know, like, we want you to be able to go and do what you need to be focused on, right?
Yes.
It's more of an understanding of the structure. I think if you have your structure down, right, that's when you have things. That's when everyone is operating at their most efficient. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, like I think of it with my daughters. There's an empowerment issue where like I could come along and do everything with them, but at some point I'm undercutting them and their abilities. And I'm purposely not engaged with what you're doing because I believe in you and I trust in you. And vice versa. I know you think you have things that you're uniquely wired for and that you need to do. Yeah, like we could both make the dinner tonight, but only one person can do your homework. And that's you.
Right.
And so I'm not pulling you into dinner making prep. I will handle that myself so you can do what only you can do. That's respecting my daughter. That is giving her a chance to flourish at something that she's unique at and what she needs to grow at. To the same degree, like I love that is there's an honor towards the people that we're inviting into the meeting, because we're saying we're just trying to hear from you, and we want to make sure that we give you ample time to share. And if we have 15 people at a meeting where it should just be 5, I've just cut down your ability to share by, what is that, 66%? I've just dramatically decreased your ability to share. I'm not respecting you when I really need to hear your voice, and vice versa. Again, going back to the facility guy, I don't want you here if you're contracted 40. I don't want you to feel like you have to go to 45, 50, 55 because you're being pulled in so many directions you don't need to be. I want to honor your time and respect it and pull you out of something you don't need to be a part of. That respect goes both ways for people who are and aren't there. I really appreciate that nuance you just fleshed out there.
No, that's great. And great advice, honestly, for leaders as they're going, just to making sure that they're inviting the right people. Again, for the participant, for the person that's sitting in the meeting that's been invited, for team members who are attending, but maybe they don't feel engaged, right? Like they feel like, okay, I'm in these meetings, but I don't know how to contribute. What would you say are some tips, some steps that they can take just to be able to contribute more when they are invited to these meetings?
Yeah, the first thing as the leader would be to look for that and to engage it. I'm watching you right now as we talk, and are you bobbleheading and giving me head nods? Is what I'm saying interesting to you? If not, then like I'm taking cues from you right now. This is simple, and I'm responding to it. I'm a preacher. I got a chance to do that on stage as well. When you're talking to a room, you can see what's hitting with them, and then you can respond accordingly. Man, there's meat on these bones. These people are responding to this. I'm going to lean into this point. Or this has been played out. I can see Frank over there nodding off, and I can see Jane checking her phone. It's funny, like preacher, you can see if most people don't realize this. You can see everything that's happening in the room.
Yes.
Which can be encouraging or disheartening. So to extrapolate that to the same principle, most leaders lead a meeting, but they're not feeling the room. And any good preacher is going to feel the room and respond to the moment in real time. And again, lean in or back off. Any good meeting leader will do the same thing. They will feel the moment and they will lean in or they'll back off. But first of all, you have to have eyes to perceive and to be able to take the temperature of the room before you ratchet it up or ratchet it down. So that's the first thing, do that. And then the second thing, if you are not seeing people participating, ask why, and then follow up. I remember I was leading staff meetings at a church, and we had 30 staff members. And I was leading the whole thing, and I kicked it off, and I was doing the icebreaker. And that's not my bag. I'm not, I'll just Google that before, and I wasn't really good at it, and I wasn't fully invested in it. And as a leader, I could read the room and saying, this moment, what it's supposed to be doing is not doing what I intended it to do.
Right.
And so I looked around at one of the people who's most disengaged, and I said, hey, it looks like you're kind of bored when I'm doing my icebreakers, which I understand. They're not that engaging. Would that be a fair assessment? Yeah, that would be a fair assessment. And they said, can you help? Could you take this thing that I'm not good in, and could you change it so that it would be something that would engage you and invigorate you, not just you, but other people as well. So in terms of like stepping up participation as a leader, hand off leadership. Give people to participate, not just like respond, but handling elements within the meeting. Again, this is like really low hanging fruit. I've been a part of like church staffs, and all the staff will meet, and it's an icebreaker. It's a getting to know you. There's a prayer moment. There's an update. There's all these things, and it's the lead pastor doing all of it. Right, man, wow. You missed an opportunity to empower people who could do it better than you, and you can foster greater participation. Because they're going to be participating because they're owning it. And again, hopefully they do it better than you, than what you can do. And even if you can't, like even if they do it at half the level of what you're doing, It's a developmental opportunity.
Right.
Pass off leadership as much as you can. So that's the first thing, is if you want to increase engagement, pass off responsibility to people in the meeting. And then the other thing too is create a safe place for questions. Again, I go back to the picnic illustration, right?
Yes.
Where somebody can say, "Hey, is there a question that you have?" And I say a safe place for it, because sometimes you're as a leader, you're waiting for people to participate, but they don't feel safe. They don't feel I can say the emperor has no clothes. Because when you ask a question, right, you're alluding to a potential gap. A gap of knowledge, a gap of leadership, a gap of vision, a gap of purpose. There doesn't seem to be a purpose to this picnic yet. That's, you're throwing some, if not stones, you're throwing some pebbles when you ask questions like that. Is that a safe place to do it? And here's the thing: if a leader, if you don't know whether or not your place is safe, it probably, people don't feel it yet. And they're only going to do it when you demonstrate it and give them clear opportunity to do it. So even if you have to prep that and have people in advance say, I know you've asked this question to me personally, and it was an appropriately challenging question. I want you to bring that up in the staff meeting, because I want you to model, and I want people to see me model a receptive spirit. We have these behind the door conversations, and no one else sees it. So no one else is doing it. Will you, publicly and politely challenge me as you did behind the closed door, so other people feel free to do that? So if a leader, again, if you're not getting participation, people aren't potentially may not feel safe in your environments to challenge when needed.
Wow, that's really good. And what would you say to someone, a listener today, who they're the one that's participating? They're sitting in these meetings, and they just feel like, man, I want to bring more. I want to bring more to these meetings. I want to step up. How would you encourage them to chime in? What can they bring of value when they attend a meeting?
Again, it could be participating through leading an element. It could be asking challenging questions, beyond that, I'm not entirely sure what else they could do to increase participation level. The only thing probably would be to suggest agenda items as well. So it's not like they're asked to lead something, but what's a question that you think we need to wrestle through as a church? And can you not only facilitate, but can you bring that question to the table? Sure. Maybe I want to see it and vet it first as a leader of the meeting, so it's not just a free for all. But can you bring topics to the agenda that are currently missing as well? So not just giving ownership of pre-existing agenda items, but fostering and owning ones that they need to bring to the table.
No, that's really good. And honestly, sometimes I think it's just for those participants, maybe you're new to them, maybe you're just still kind of wondering why in the world they're having you show up to certain meetings. I would just say show up ready to give your best. You know what I mean? Just ready to chime in. Maybe it's not led in the way that you would hope that it was. And I've attended some meetings like that over the years, right? But always being prepared to bring your best, even if sometimes you feel like maybe I wish it was structured differently, or it was outlined a little bit differently than this. Being willing to do that, I think makes a big difference. But I'm curious if someone is listening to this today and they're just thinking like, I'm ready to improve our meetings. I'm ready to kind of take it to the next level. They're ready to make these meetings more meaningful, make them more impactful. What would you say to them today? If they're ready, what simple steps or what next step would you give if they're ready to start making these things better?
Yeah, I would zoom out first and get the big picture. I would assess what types of meetings you have. There's all different types of meetings, right? There's a planning meeting, there's a review meeting, there's a debrief meeting, there's an annual report meeting. It's different types of meetings. Zoom out and see what types of meetings you have first of all, to get an assessment of what you're covering. Because sometimes you're having the wrong meetings, or you're having too much of the right meeting. So get an assessment of where you land in relation to that spectrum, and things that you're doing too much of, cut them. Stop doing it. I was within a church, and we were reviewing the service every week, and we were spending about an hour doing that. And then at some point, it just felt like navel gazing, and we were just like looking for problems. I said, you know what? Let's go every other week. I don't think we need to do this every week. And then we went to like once a month, and the experience was still great, But that was something, that was a meeting that I was doing every week until I zoomed out and said, we're just doing this too often. We can get pretty much the same results with a quarter of the investment.
Wow.
See what you can cut back. And then on the flip side, see what you need to invest in. Now, cat out of the bag, most churches aren't doing enough strategic planning. What I mean by that is we are the tyranny, right? Sunday's always coming. We're always looking at that upcoming Sunday, which is so we're on a treadmill to do that week after week after week. So to craft time where we get our heads above water and saying, what does God want us to do for the next 3 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years? And how do we start planning to that end? Most churches don't have time for that, don't make time for that.
Right.
And so if there's one meeting that I would say you probably need to add is strategic planning. Most churches miss that opportunity just because the tyranny of Sundays coming every Sunday. Those are some very practical ways to make it better. Yeah. And then I'll say, ask staff. Your staff will tell you. Your volunteers will tell you. How could I make this meeting better? You tell me. Most will probably say, make it shorter. But there's some who might say, make it longer, or you're just too agenda driven. And we need to spend at least 50 minutes up front just talking with each other, connecting with each other. Ministry's tough, and it feels like we're just go. We're so focused on what's coming up next week that we forget to celebrate what God did last week. Can we spend some time? Your staff will give you that feedback, especially if you make the survey anonymous. They'll give you very clear feedback on what you can do better. But I would say ask the people who are participating. If you want your meetings to be made better, ask those involved, and they will tell you.
No, that's great advice. And overall, I'm taking so much away from this because meetings are something that apply to so many different areas of ministry and things like that. And so I know this has been a great conversation to hear. I would ask you this, something that we ask this to everyone that comes on the podcast, and you've been on before. So I'm interested to see if maybe your answer is around the same on this, or if it's changed up a little bit. But we're all about empowering healthy churches. In your opinion, what would you say is one essential component of a healthy church?
Big picture, if your church can focus in on the external, eternal needs instead of the temporary, internal needs, you're going to be, by and large, a pretty healthy church. What I mean by that is external, eternal needs. So how are you thinking about not just the people in your four walls, but beyond that, your greater community, the external focus, not just the people who are already here, but the people God wants to bring here, and their eternal needs, their relationship with their Father at the end of the day. In contrast to a lot of churches, unhealthy churches can focus in on internal, temporary needs. So what do my people want right now? What's the style of worship that they want? Well, whatever it is, it's whatever contemporary version, it's going to just be temporary, and something new is going to come down the road. Don't fix that on that. The style of preaching, is it expository? Is it topical? That's going to be very, if you look at when churches hire lead pastors, they'll actually, most of them will yo-yo back and forth. We've had one guy doing expository for 10 years. It feels a little played out. We want a new guy who's doing topical, and he's going to do it for 10 years. And then guess what? You're going to swing back on the other side of the pendulum. So that's a temporary internal need. But a lot of our worship, what's the youth group like? What's the preaching style? Again, temporary internal needs that it's important to some level. But if you're able to rise above that and keep the external eternal needs front and center, you're going to be, by and large, a pretty healthy church.
Man, that is a great word for today. Overall, I mean, this has been great just to hear. I feel like it's going to be really, really beneficial for ministry leaders as they're going and they're trying to put these things into place, because I think a great sign of a healthy church, as we're talking about that, right, is that we're always trying to improve. And meetings are one of those things. You mentioned this. We just stick to what we've done, or, we've just been doing the same thing. All right, this is what we do. But I think challenging and saying, okay, how can we improve this area is something that will end up having a ripple effect throughout the entire organization, right? As we improve our meetings and you make the best use of our time. And so I know this has been really valuable. Something that we always like to do as we wrap things up is we have a final five, a rapid fire. And again, you've been through these before, but I have a feeling that maybe the answer, some of them may have changed since over a year ago. And so are you up to going through a rapid fire round of questions?
Kendall, shoot away.
All right. I'm here for it. Okay. So the first one is, what is one book that you would recommend to church leaders? Maybe this is meeting focused, or maybe it's not.
Oh, you know what? This applies for both. It applies for meetings, your service experiences, for a lot. The Power of Moments by Dan and Chip Heath, the Heath brothers. Quick premise is people will remember two things in experience. They'll remember the peak moment and then the end moment. And so because of that, whatever the best thing is, they'll remember that and how they end. That's why when you go to Disney World, they spend millions of dollars on fireworks as people are walking out. Why? Because they remember it. Most amusement parks, what's your last memory? Your last memory is being exhausted and dragging your kid to the car and trying to find it in this oversized parking lot, because that's the no, Disney says you're going to remember the last moment, and it's going to be this awesome firework. So in your meetings, hey, everybody, thank you for participating. We just took time to move the mission forward.
Wow.
Thank you for investing that. Like a simple thank you is how people are going to remember that meeting experience. Power moments, what's the peak and what's the end? Oftentimes we forget about it, especially churches. The last thing is kind of like, there's the door. See you next week.
No, that is great. And I'll have to check out that book. I haven't read that one. All right. Next question is, what is the last thing that you listen to on Apple Music or Spotify, wherever you listen to your media at?
I know this because we were driving to the movie last night. I took my kids to see the play couple in the summertime, Wicked in New York. And then we saw the movie last night. So of course, on the way there, we just had the soundtrack cranked up to 11. And I think I blew our speakers out because it was so loud.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, so if you know the song really well, did you guys sing along when you were in the
Don't ask me to sing it, bro. Do not. You don't want people to unsubscribe, okay? My daughters did, and of course, as a dad, I sang along and butchered it off key as well. So yes I did.
Oh, that's awesome. What would you say is your favorite piece of technology or software these days?
I'm loving Captions.ai, I believe. It's an application that allows you to quickly throw captions on your videos, which again, most people, when they're scrolling through social media, they're they're in their office environment, maybe they're on the toilet seat, they're not playing audio, and so if you have the captions, that allows them to watch the video and read along, which is super helpful. But then for myself, we were just in the midst of launching a Spanish campus, and the light bulb came on, and it's like, you know what, we can take these videos, our English videos, and we can get them dubbed into Spanish. And then we can get it transcribed into Spanish and subtitled into Spanish. And now we've created a whole new back catalog for this campus that we're looking to launch, and gave them a resource to see what's the type of teaching and preaching that they'll experience here. And when we go to the page and we can see the view counts, that resource is one of the highest things people access. It's like, oh my goodness, this is great. Now we need to let them know. And actually, the dubbing is so good that someone said, I didn't realize our lead pastor is so fluent in Spanish. I said, no, he's not. Don't be fooled by the app. The technology is it's hard to keep up with. It's moving so fast. Yeah. But that's a great resource if you're looking to caption and even dub into a different language.
That's incredible. All right, I know this will be a good one. What is a quote or maybe some advice that has kind of stuck with you over the years?
It's probably a little trite, but I know I've had to experience it a lot, and I've owned it. It took me a while to own it, but especially younger families in ministry, is that your family is your first ministry. And so I know for myself that when I got involved in ministry, my wife and I, we were, it took us a while to have kids, and I was doing probably up to 60 hours plus on a regular basis. And the mentor said, you can get away with this now before you have kids. You're not going to be able to. And you need to start living your life in that manner, so that when your kids show up, God willing, you'll be here for them. Because if not, you're inversing thing, and the church is your first ministry, and that's not the way God's designed it to be. So any young, and even we all need healthy boundaries. So even if you don't have kids, or even if you're not married, just make sure that, the people you care for,
Yes.
biologically related to you or not, is your first ministry. And then your involvement in your local church is your second.
That's so good. What a great reminder for today. Last one is really what is just one thing that you would like to communicate to our audience of church leaders that are listening today?
You know what? There's a phrase I used to drive me nuts hearing when I was younger in ministry, because it felt trite. But the older I get, the more I believe it to be true, and the more I find myself saying it authentically. And it's the best is yet to come. Again, I've been in contexts where it felt like that was just a thin veneer and trying to put lipstick on a pig. It's kind of like the Titanic sinking, right? And you can see the captain like, the best is yet to come. It's like, bro, look around. We're sinking. And I've been in part of like staff where like we're atrophying and, giving's down, attendance down, and everything's down. And the leaders, the best is yet to come. And they're just, and it's not tethered into reality. But the more I've reflected through the good times and the bad times, I believe that to be true because we serve a risen Savior who's with us. And those times he is going to lead us through. He's leading us now and he's going to lead us into more. And I believe he has great things in store for us. He wants to advance his kingdom. Gates of hell will not stand against it. And because of that, I can say authentically, even when I don't necessarily feel it to be true, I know it to be true. The best is yet to come for our leaders listening and for their churches as well.
I feel like that deserves a good amen. That is good. That is good stuff.
Preachers are going to preach
for today. Ben, tell us where can people find you? Where can they follow you? If they want to connect with you more.
Yeah, you can connect with me on social media. I think I'm on all the apps other than TikTok as Ben Stapley. And then if this is a good conversation, you're like, but I want more. I always offer people up to an hour of just pro bono time that I'd love to hear and help you, coach you through your meetings or other issues that your church may face. If you go to benstapley.com/coach, you can schedule time with me there, and I'd love to help you. And even if I'm not the right person, I'd love to redirect you to somebody else who may help you take the next step forward. So don't do ministry alone. Find a coach to help you along the journey.
Oh, that's amazing. And I think that's a great opportunity for people who are listening today. So overall, thank you so much, Ben. This has been an amazing conversation. And I feel like I'm ready to go have a meeting right now after this conversation, right? This has been a big win. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. I'll put you on the spot and ask one question on the way out. You've had me twice. Will you have me thrice? Will I be back next year?
I'm telling you, just consider yourself. You always have a spot. You always are always welcome on here. And so
we have this recorded, my friend. I'm going to hold you to it. Kendall, it's been great.
I love that. And so thank you so much, friend, for being on here. And for everyone who is listening, who's watching along today, thank you so much for joining us. If you've made it to the end here, I would just tell you, if you found value, if you've been encouraged, any of these things, or you're thinking about somebody who would benefit from hearing this conversation, we would just encourage you to share it. Send it to someone, a friend in ministry, someone who's serving. If this has been valuable to you, follow us when you listen to podcasts. Leave us a review there. It makes a big difference in helping us to get the word out to more people. And if you're following along on YouTube, we would encourage you just to hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, let us know if this has been beneficial to you, or maybe if you just want to tell us how you're going to implement some of this in your next meeting. We would love to hear from you. Overall, all of these ways just help us to get this in the ears of more church leaders. And so we appreciate any form of sharing and helping us getting the word out. But until next time, we will see you right here on Church Leadership Lab.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple to use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.